Anna, welcome to Waterstones.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
I'm very excited to talk to you about this book for a couple of reasons. One, I just mentioned to you off camera, which is that any time I hear anybody talking about this book, they literally purr.
You're so sweet.
But it's true. I've heard about people talking about it on the radio. A couple of booksellers today saw me grabbing this book, and I mentioned that I was filming with you, and they just went, "Oh my God, that book is amazing." So, in fact, one was a recent vegetarian, and it's changed his life clearly.
Oh, wow,
so,
amazing! Wow, that's brilliant to hear.
What I love is, so it's called The Modern Cook's Year, and it is about seasonal cooking.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're approaching a very clear season here with Christmas.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, first of all, whether there were certain ingredients or tastes or smells that make you feel Christmassy.
Oh yeah, there definitely are. I feel like this time of year, for me, I get quite obsessed with kind of all the citrus that you get this time of year. So the pomegranates, not the pomegranates. So the citrus, not pomegranates, they're not citrus. But I was thinking pomegranates at the same time.
But they are very Christmassy.
So the clementines, the lemons, the oranges. I think quite a lot of wintry and Christmassy food people sort of think about as quite heavy, as not having those kind of light, bright notes. But I love to sort of, roast root vegetables or cook, indulgent pies around Christmas, but then kind of, finish it off with something fresh, so a bit of lemon zest, a bit of clementine zest, a bit of juice or something. So those things kind of I love at this time of year because I feel like they counteract the kind of heavy richness of a lot of the food. Pomegranates, which I accidentally mentioned, but I do love those. I just think they're, I always have a couple of those kind of like hanging around in my house. The food is kind of the decorations, really. So we have, bowls of clementines with their leaves on, and lovely lemons and pomegranates and nuts and figs and those kind of things. So that ends up sort of being part of our Christmas decorations to me. And I do think at this time of year, when it really starts to get bitingly cold, we do kind of crave more kind of carbohydrates, more stodgy food. So I think I love all the kind of, celeriac, all the root vegetables that are around at the moment. I think it is a bit of an excuse to, have those things that do feel slightly more indulgent.
You've mentioned celeriac there. That you have a recipe in your book for a celeriac pie, which you mentioned as having been a sort of centerpiece for your Christmas table.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have this weird thing over Christmas. People talk about what meat they're going to have. Are you having turkey, or is it going to be goose or beef or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
So the joke, of course, every year is it's nut roast for the vegetarian, but you have obviously got, that celeriac pie, which has made me very hungry, even thinking about it, but that is a great centerpiece for a Christmas table. But are there other recipes in here that you think are applicable for a sort of a vegetarian centerpiece?
Yeah, there are, definitely. The celeriac pie particularly I love because it's kind of got quite sort of indulgent feeling to it, and I've served it to lots of kind of very committed meat eaters, and they're asking for slices of that over, whatever other meat they might be eating. So I know that's always a seal of approval. There's lots of other dishes in the book. There's a really delicious chard and kind of walnut crostata thing, so a sort of free-form tart, and I put lots of walnuts into the pastry, so it's got like a really, really lovely buttery texture, but also it's a great way to use up, that inevitable bag of nuts that someone buys. And why do we even buy walnuts in their shells at Christmas? No one does that the rest of the year. It's like we've all gone mad. But so it's a way of using those up, but it's also got this lovely filling of chard, and in the summer I use kind of fresh herbs like dill and mint and coriander, but in the winter I switch that up and use kind of sage and crumble some chestnuts over the top. So there's definitely some dishes like that. I think there's also some simpler dishes, because I do think at Christmas we are so obsessed with, making every meal this enormous palaver, and it's brilliant to, commit to, one or two amazing meals, but I also think you can let yourself off the hook and have some people around and serve an enormous, delicious bowl of pasta at the same time. There's a really simple one in here, just with lemon zest and loads of winter herbs and good olive oil, and it's a 10-minute dinner, and if you put a bowl of that in the middle of the table and a nice salad, I think people would be, as enthused as they would be, if you'd spent 10 hours in the kitchen. So I think it's also allowing yourself to, just not spend the entire time worrying about cooking and eating.
There's the thing as well that we don't do so much anymore because I think we have convenient food, we have massive supermarkets. But of course, people used to do all the time, which is fermenting vegetables, canning, bottling, all the rest of it. And you have mentioned many of those things in your book. And I was really pleased to see that, because often I think things like that make beautiful Christmas gifts as well as being things that you can eat. They're a lovely thing that you can give to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Why don't people do that more?
Well, I think it's just a time thing, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
all kind of pretty pushed for time, I think, these days. I think everyone feels like they've got a lot on and they're quite busy, and that's absolutely valid. But I think perhaps people don't have the time to lament over making things and doing things for Christmas. But I think that's changing. I think people are kind of taking a bit more time. I think what has been happening in the world in the last couple of years has definitely made us take a few steps back in terms of the sort of commerciality of Christmas and the sort of spending and the kind of sometimes grossness of it all. But there's definitely some recipes in here for some things. There's an amazing sauerkraut recipe with red cabbage, which has got some sort of juniper and Christmas sort of flavours in it, which would be an amazing gift, and some chocolate truffles, which will always go down a treat. And I think the thing with my cooking is I'm pretty impatient, and also I have a 2-year-old, and also I don't like spending 7 hours in the kitchen. I want something done, and definitely usually weeknights 20 to 30 minutes, and on the weekend under an hour. So all of the things are pretty...
No, there's a simplicity to them.
Pretty simple, hopefully. So you won't be spending 4 days making your Christmas gifts, is what I'm trying to say.
What I liked, though, looking through it, was that the pictures and the recipes themselves do make it look simple. It's about combining maybe a couple of ingredients, a few sort of supplementary herbs and flavours to create something that sort of becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Does that make sense?
I think that's it, and I think that's where cooking with the seasons is amazing, because if you can search out that amazing squash or that amazing pomegranate or that perfectly ripe pear, you're getting all the flavour, you're getting all the depth from those ingredients, and you actually don't need to do quite as much with them. And I think that's kind of how I'm kind of approaching my cooking at Christmas as well. I'm just trying to pick out 3 or 4, really killer ingredients and make those the star, rather than trying to make, 4,000 different types of mashed potato and parsnips and whatever. So,
Well, you're here this evening to sign copies of your book and to enjoy mulled wine, I believe, and other things as well. So I mustn't take up any more of your time, but it's so great to speak to you. And again, I'm so hungry after talking about it.
Well,
but it's just
next time I'm going to have to bring some food. You should have told me.
This is a deal. That's a verbal contract you've just made. Very good.
Great.
Okay, next time, food. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.